This is Miller Philosopher. To many fans, both the readers and viewers of the movies or shows, the Fellowship of the Ring represented the best and ultimate version of cooperation between different peoples, cultures, and joined by a single cause, the destruction of the One Ring. And through those elements became a band of brothers, people who would do anything for each other and the destruction of the One Ring, despite their own faults and obstacles that got in their way, even an entire war. However, Tolkien also wrote about another fellowship in the Silmarillion and the Children of Hurin, the Gaurwaith, a fellowship not unlike the one we all know and love in many ways, yet having drastic differences as well, and ultimately came to the completely opposite end of the Fellowship of the Ring. This band of brothers was led by none other than Turin, who at the time was going under the alias Nathan, and whom I shall refer to as for the rest of this video. Why did one fellowship fail while the other succeeded? I'll look at this from the point of view of their similarities, their differences, and my conclusions from those. Briefly, the Fellowship of the Ring, as we all know, was brought together at Rivendell for the purpose of destroying the One Ring that was recently discovered, consisting of representatives from each major race, and we all know their names, whose job it was to protect Frodo, the Ring Bearer, at all costs until arriving at Mount Doom and casting the ring into the fire. Throughout this adventure, they had to deal with many situations that range from staying hidden from various enemies, ranging from orcs to even in a Balrog, to internal prejudices and personal politics amongst themselves. They're even eventually separated, which actually results in one of their few failures as the Fellowship, when two of their number, Gandalf and Boromir, end up getting killed, and Frodo and Sam separate themselves from the rest of the group. That being said, the rest of them, Aragorn, Legolas, and Gimli, and then come across a resurrected Gandalf and get caught up in the larger stage of the War of the Ring, which leads to then many successes. Eventually, their paths all come together during the Battle of the Black Gate, while one half distracts Sauron and his armies, the other half, Frodo and Sam, get to Mount Doom, only for the Ring Bearer to finally succumb to the One Ring's influence, a second failure of the Fellowship, only for Gollum to then attack Frodo, take the ring, and then fall into the volcano, thereby ending the quest and the ultimate success of the Fellowship. The Gaurwaith were also brought together by larger circumstances, assumed to have formed after the disastrous Nernaeth-Arnoriad War. It was made up of male human survivors from various groups or armies that were trying to survive and escape the armies of Morgoth by attacking Halidin communities and travelers near the south of Brethil. Because while the war in the north had resulted in a total victory for Morgoth in the north, he had as of yet gone that far south to try and extend that victory. And it was underneath him that they came to serve a larger purpose other than just surviving, forming a guerrilla resistance against Morgoth that blockaded his attacks to the south and thus sparing southern Beleriand, for a time at least, from the destruction that was wrought in the north. Ethan also seemed to come across to the others of the Gaurwaith as someone who was very unusual. Not your typical man, as it were. Someone whose battle prowess and IQ were seemingly unparalleled, and his charisma helping the Gaurwaith stop attacking other peoples and focus their assaults instead on the orcs. And Nathan, too, also wielded a legendary sword, the Black Blade Gurthang, forged long ago, by mortal standards anyway, by the Sindar elven smith Egil, and an extended member who later betrays them as well, and which ultimately results in that they actually failed in their intended goals. But this is where the similarities end. The Gaurwaith were nothing like the Fellowship, morally speaking. Unlike their Third Age counterparts that clearly had some sense of general morality despite personal enmities that they may have or may not have had towards each other, the Gaurwaith were outlaws, in arguably the worst sense of the word. While the published Silmarillion just gives us a general blanket statement of their actions against their own kind, the Children of Hurin is more explicit. Specifically, how Nathan came to take over the group because their original leader, Forweg, had been pursuing a terrified woman through the woods before Nathan killed him. Though he didn't know whom he had killed until too late, Androg, Forweg's second, had also been part of the chase. The woman wants Nathan to kill him as well for what they're about to do, but Nathan refuses and sends her home safely. When Nathan demands to know why the hell these two men were chasing her, I mean, honestly, how could he not know? Androg literally laughs in his face, replying, "Outlaws know no laws but their needs."
What? What the fuck?
Yeah, so this arguably might be the most disturbing line that I've ever seen Tolkien write. This vague and dark response implies very dark conclusions. That, one, this wasn't the first time that members of the Gaurwaith had been assaulting women as well as committing murder. And two, that this changes the perspective of their plight from one of just survivors trying to survive against an evil enemy to the north to one of being malicious and evil in and of themselves that even the orcs, in the published works anyway, did not do. The final straw for Nathan is when his longtime elven friend Beleg is discovered tied to a tree, beaten, and not having eaten for 2 days. From then on, Nathan, as the new leader of the Gaurwaith, has them swear off any attacks on traditional allies of the Edain, other men and elves, and instead focusing their attacks on Morgoth. And it's through this that they eventually rise to a higher purpose and cause, eventually, arguably at least anyway, achieving a higher morality, at least higher than what it was. The Gaurwaith were also much more in number than just 9 people, with their number by the time Nathan encounters them being somewhere between 50 and 60 men. But by the peak of their power, numbering so many that they had several bases spread out throughout the now named Dor Carthul, the land of the bow and helm, which they defended against Morgoth and was literally a realm which Nathan had become lord over. So much for secrecy, since they were now large enough to field a small army capable of challenging Morgoth successfully, if temporarily, and this leading to the Fellowship's actually holding a sizable amount of territory, not just wandering around Middle-earth. Finally, of course, there's their bloody end. Being betrayed by Mime, the petty dwarf, the Gaurwaith, or at least their main encampment, find themselves ambushed in a night raid by orcs that ultimately leads to all but 3 of them, according to the book The World of Jewels, getting killed. What led to such a very similar yet different groups of people getting very different endings? The obvious answer would be fate. That while the Fellowship of the Ring was fated to hold the course until the ring was gone via Golem, that the Gaurwaith were fated to fail via part of Morgoth's curse upon Nathan's father, Hurin. Now, if you watch my videos on Turin and Naenor, then you would know that I don't subscribe to the idea that it was a curse that caused Hurin's children's demise. And Children of Hurin seems to actually suggest as much, stating that the reason why Morgoth was so intent on taking down Dor Carthul was because he became afraid of Nathan, aka Turin, avoiding his curse, being how successful he was being a lord of his own realm. And secondly, that Mime had actually cursed Androg, and that the man was supposed to die after being shot by a poisonous arrow. Yet Beleg, using his Sindarin elven healing arts, saved him, and thus by hindering the curse. So therefore, I think the reason why the Gaurwaith failed was because of their size and their recklessness. The Fellowship of the Ring stressed secrecy above all else regarding their mission to Mordor, even, though not said, not using the great eagles to just carry them near the borders of Mordor, as the classic joke goes. Gandalf and Aragorn kept in mind not only the goal of their mission, but thoroughly understood the enemy they were up against, therefore realizing that they could not afford any reckless action or sense of overconfidence to blind them, even when they had the armies of the West at their back. The Gaurwaith, in contrast, started out with secrecy, but due to Nethin's growing confidence and recklessness, became larger in number and therefore more notable and more impossible to eventually hide. Now, to be fair to Nethin, this is actually what he wanted, because he was a frontline warrior of the House of Hador, and not just some stealthy hunter or refugee or fleeing outlaw. Nethin and the Gaurwaith caused their own demise because they underestimated the strength and cunning of the forces against them, and not paying much attention to what was happening internally. And even if Mime had not betrayed them, Morgoth would have gotten obsessed to the point of sending Glaurung and the Balrogs just to make sure that the children of Hurin suffered and did not succeed. And with the exception of the Doors, arguably, no one could stand against those cards when they were in play. So, therefore, that's why the Gaurwaith were the Fellowship gone wrong, and kind of a blueprint or map of the Fellowship in the future Third Age, of where they succeeded despite their own personal failures. But that's all I pretty much had on this. This is the Miller Philosopher. Have a good day.